Hello, I'm Tony Carter, pastor of East Point Church in East Point, Georgia. And I'm joined today on the front porch with a good friend named Elbert McGowan. He's the director of RUF at Jackson State University in Mississippi. And Elbert, thanks for joining me on the front porch.
Pleasure to be here, Tony. Thank you so much for the invite.
Well, I'm glad to have you today, man. I think we're going to have a good conversation, interesting conversation about the work that the Lord is calling you to. But before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right, I was born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi. Grew up in a home where my mother and father were together, but I guess it was the late 80s. Crack cocaine kind of flooded Jackson, Mississippi. And my father just was addicted to it, and that was kind of an on and off struggle from 1988 until I married my wife in '04. And so grew up sort of seeing both sides of the fence, so to speak, being around uncles and cousins who were also addicted to crack cocaine, but also a mother who loved the Lord, loved the scriptures, loved her family, and loved us, and sort of made sure that, you know, we had what we needed to survive, and also instilled in us just a work ethic to go to school and to do well. And so ended up being sent to Alabama A&M. My mom forced me and my brother to leave Mississippi. She wanted us to be away from Jackson, so to speak, and she trusted that the Lord would care for her even in the absence of her two sons. And graduated from Alabama A&M in '01 and moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. Worked as an engineer for 4 years with GE, aircraft engines. And then somewhere in my time in Cincinnati, my mother ended up bouncing around a few churches in Jackson. I mean, she was at her wit's end and very frustrated with the lack of pastoral involvement in her life. And she had been crying out for help in many different settings, and to no avail. And that actually caused some bitterness in my heart, both towards the Lord, because I had prayed year after year after year that he would deliver my father and preserve my family. And it also caused frustration with the church, because I was hearing one thing from the pulpit and not seeing that connect into sort of how it caused people to rally around us, the suffering. And so to that end, when I was in college, man, I never went to church. And my mother would always call me on Saturday night, "You going to church?" And yeah, I'm going, and never went. And so graduated and was living a life hostile to the Lord. And my mother ended up hearing this white preacher on the radio preaching the gospel, and didn't know that it was in Jackson, and she ended up going. And it was a Trinity Presbyterian church of all places. And my mother went and was being fed. And so my father professed to be a believer. And so he joined the church, not knowing that that church both took the public preaching of the word seriously, but also the private pastoring of its people. And through that ordeal, my father was loved well by a group of men. They drug tested him, went into crack houses to get him, went into our home and poured out pain medicines. And I'm in Ohio hearing about these white men going into my house. And on the one hand, it was suspicion, but then on the other hand, it was thankfulness. And through that whole ordeal, my father was finally converted in '04 and is now a deacon at the church that I serve, that I work at now, a Redeemer in Jackson. And it's just been a glorious testament to God's grace and faithfulness. And so as my father was converted, and as I was getting restless with my position with GE and sensing a calling first to the Lord, but also that burden to sort of share the gospel with inmates, fraternity brothers, co-workers, after about a year and a half, I started sensing the Lord calling me to gospel ministry. And the first book that I got, I was given to me by Brian Taylor, was your book. And some other readings Brian Taylor sent me, and I consented to the doctrines of grace and believed it to be scriptural and biblical. And to that end, ended up resigning with my new wife's blessing, who had just finished pharmacy school in '04 as well. And we got married in May, resigned in July, and enrolled in seminary in August. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about me.
So now you're actually living back in Jackson and ministering in Jackson. What's it like to minister in the place where you've grown up? Is it true that a prophet is without honor?
That may have been true for Jesus. Yeah. But I think it's helped. I think, you know, one, going to an HBCU. My wife went to Stillman, and she also went to Florida A&M. And so we just have a rich appreciation for those schools and universities, and also a deep appreciation for its history. A lot of those schools were founded by missionary societies. They were founded by churches. They were founded by sometimes the state, so that African Americans could have equal right to education. And so we've seen the Lord do something amazing with our backgrounds, with our experience, coupled with me being from Jackson. I can't tell you, day in and day out, I'm constantly meeting people on campus who taught me in Upward Bound, who were my tutors or counselors in NYSP. And so these were organizations I was a part of growing up as initiatives to reach urban youth on college campuses. And I walk on campus, and the dean of the liberal arts department at Jackson State was my tutor. And so I've seen the Lord use that whole idea of returning back home as a platform for doors being opened and avenues being provided that I don't think would have been there.
And I'm sure your life is an encouragement to them as they see you now and the things that you're doing and the ministry and things. Now you are in a unique position because you are the director of what is known as RUF Jackson State, which is Reformed University Fellowship. How is that unique ministry, particularly in positioning Reformed theology in that HBCU context?
It's unique in the sense that Jackson State was the first Jackson State RUF, which the Lord enabled us to start in '07. It's the first chapter that we've ever had on a historically black college and university. And so in that sense, it's unique, it's significant, I think, because we're seeing that the Lord has a people, even on our HBCUs, that he can work and save and call to himself and raise up and set apart. And so it's significant in that sense, I think.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be speaking to a pioneer here then. Someone who's laying the groundwork for hopefully other RUFs on other historically black university campuses. You mentioned your wife, and you and your wife been married for how long?
We've been married 8 years, going on 9 in this May.
8 years, wow, praise God. Now she ministers with you, kind of partners with you in the ministry as well as all of life. Tell me the kind of role that she plays just in the ministry that God is calling you to, and how important that is.
Wow, it's huge. One, she's my best friend. I love my wife, and I would like to think she loves me dearly, and she respects me. And I'll never forget, thinking about resigning from GE, when everyone around us thought it was foolish to walk away from a good living, when everyone around us was saying, hey, you guys can have 2 good incomes for a few years and then go to seminary. When I even had doubts about resigning, it was my wife who says that, I love you, and wherever you go, I'm going. And don't worry about how we'll make it. God is faithful, and if he's called us to Jackson, he'll provide. And so ever since that statement, it was as if the Lord had spoke to me, just saying, I'm with you and I will not abandon you. And I've sent you someone who's going to be a helper to you in ministry. And so she's my best friend. She is very hospitable. She opens our home every other Sunday. And she cooks for 40 students every other Sunday. The 40 students of our ministry who come to church with us. she's cooking, and she has it down to a science, a routine. She knows how to get this chicken from Sam's, or she knows how to, you know, fix this casserole. Right. She has contacts within our church, ladies that she calls upon and says, hey, can you drop this dish over? She knows how to cook meals that stretch. And I mean, she just has, and she loves it. Like, it's a joy. Put her in front of girls and make her teach. Oh, wow. That's something that she might think twice about. But give her something to do that's gonna bring students in and around. She's on it. And so she's just, you know, a very plays a huge role. I mean, she is teaching a Bible study right now on Mondays for our upperclassmen girls. Okay. They're working through the book of Ruth, and it's just for upperclassmen girls making the transition out of college into, quote, the real world. And so she has a small group of girls that she disciples. She comes a large group every other Thursday night. And coming into Jackson State, there was some grave moral failure with someone in ministry on Jackson State's campus. And one of the things that we knew going into it is that we would need to portray to our students a healthy, solid, biblical, stable, sound, godly marriage. And what that means is my students, guys and girls, they need to see her. And my girls need to know that I'm set apart to one woman. Amen. And so that opens us up to be able to talk about things that I don't think we'd have the freedom to go into if they did not feel confident that my wife is the apple of my eye, so to speak. Awesome. And so she extends to me a lot of credibility just by her presence and her faithfulness.
So you said that like every Sunday your home is open and they see that model, that relationship model of a husband loving his wife and a wife submitting to her husband, and these college students, perhaps some of them come from broken homes and never seen anything like that. And God is using you and your wife to expose them to this godly model. And I mean, it's not perfect, you know, there's warts, right? We all have them. And you're able to share those too as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, our students have seen us disagree to a certain extent. And we just want to be so transparent and show our need for grace and not try to polish it up and act like we're holier than thou. We have boundaries that we set, things we will do and won't do in front of students. But for the most part, we want them to know that this is what real life ministry and marriage looks like. It's not perfect. It's not always fun. It's not always desirable. And yet, because we're in covenant with each other and with the Lord, that some of those things trump whatever's going on around us. And so the Lord's just been able to, I think, just displace his relationship with his church through our union.
Well, I'm serious when I say, man, that you're a pioneer in so many ways, you know, and I pray that God continue to bless you and to bring you fruit from the ministry that he's calling you to. Amen. And I pray that other guys will see the model that is the RUF at Jackson State, and God would give them a vision for similar models on other HBCUs. Amen. So thanks Elbert, for joining me on the front porch, man.
And this is the pioneer. He's a pioneer. He won't say it, but he is.
God bless you, brother. Thanks.
Appreciate it.